down here if you're talking too loud or not.
Well, I tell you what, good morning, everyone. I think this is working pretty well. Welcome to Bio 1120, Cells and Genes. I'm Dan Crane. I'm going to be the instructor for this class, and let's just get things underway. This is the first time that I've given a lecture in this recently renovated lecture hall, so that's kind of exciting for me. Doesn't mean much to you, but this place is looking a lot prettier than it was last fall when I started off the Bio 1120 class. What I'd like to do at the start here this morning is sort of the standard run through the syllabus. I'm afraid that'll probably be the most boring 15 minutes of the whole class, right? But then after that, we get to some good stuff. And then we're going to start talking with you about things, fundamental things, like what does it mean to be alive? Because biology is a study of life. That's the definition of biology. Biologists study living things. And I want to get us started once we're past the boring details of the syllabus, talking about exactly what that means, and then giving you a taste about what we'll be talking about during the course of the rest of this semester. Okay? So if you'll bear with me, let's roll up our sleeves and talk about the syllabus a little bit. The syllabus is available to you through the pilot page for the course. I'm not handing out copies of it, right? If you need it, you can always dial it up on the pilot page for the course. And this is a copy of it from the most recent version that we've put out there. The course is broken up into 3 sections, right? There's a part 1, a part 2, and a part 3. And we'll do them in that order even. And what's going to happen is at the end of each of the parts, there's going to be one of those nasty tests that I give you just to make sure that we're all on the same page and talking about the same sorts of things. I've taught this course before. That's something of an understatement now. I'm proud, and I am serious, I'm proud that I get to teach this class. I sort of have to shoulder out aside and elbow out of the way some of the other faculty in the biology department. This is the flagship course for the biology department, right? So the best and brightest come to take it, and the best and brightest come to teach it, and we're going to have a good time together doing that. But I've taught this course before many times now, and I can tell you with some pretty high confidence that what's going to happen here is that I'm going to hit the mark on each of those dates pretty much square on. You don't have to worry about, oh, maybe he's going to run a little long or something like that. When I say that on Thursday of this week, I'm going to talk with you about the chemistry of life, you can pretty much count I'm going to talk with you about the chemistry of life. And that becomes particularly important with regard to the 3 exams for the course. I know some of you, many of you actually, have other responsibilities, jobs, childcare things, whatever. Those 3 dates, September 29th, November 3rd, and December 13th, those are the days that we will be having exams for this class, right? So if there's some sort of tornado that shuts down the university for a couple of days at some point, those dates will still be the dates that we have the exam unless the tornado hits those particular days, and then we'll have to figure something out. All right? But so you can bank on those dates being the dates for the 3 exams for the course. That's pretty much the whole spiel for this first page. I'm going to go through the textbook for the course pretty much chapter by chapter. And speaking of the textbook, let me go to the next page of the syllabus, because there, at the very beginning, at the top of that page, is a little bit about the textbook for the class. As you guys look around, you are probably noticing this is a large class, right? For most of you, I would think for just about everybody, this is the largest assemblage of students you've ever seen, even your high school graduating classes for a lot of people. And maybe you'll give me a little bit of pity, some sympathy, when I tell you that I think about half of you now have emailed me over the last couple of weeks asking me about the textbook for this class. All right? So let me just say for the record right now, there is a textbook. It's recommended that you use this textbook. It is not required that you use the textbook. If I had a third option, like optional, I would have used optional for how I describe the textbook. The long and the short of it is this, is that the pictures that I'm going to be showing you as part of my PowerPoint presentations come from a book. It's the Campbell book. So if you want to look at the pictures, see them from different angles than you see on the screen, the book's going to be great, all right? But I'm not going to be opening up the textbook myself unless one of you comes to me and says, gee, on page 32, the book says this, and you said that, what's the deal, right? That would prompt me to open up the book and try and figure out why there's a discrepancy. I'm not going to be using the book. I'm not going to ask you what's on page 109, right? But here's the thing. I do rely pretty heavily on my own lecture notes for the course. And for those of you who got here just a few minutes early today, you probably noticed me standing conspicuously up here at the front. It's hard to blend in when, you're down here in front of everyone. But I was looking at my lecture notes, trying to collect my thoughts to think about what it is I wanted to tell you about today. I'm not looking at the textbook, I'm looking at my lecture notes. And so everybody in this room is going to get an A, right? And here's how you're going to do it. All right? What I would do if I were you is before each class, I'd take a couple minutes, and literally it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes per lecture. I would take a couple of minutes to open up the lecture notes for the class and read through those notes before you hear me give the lecture. Right? That's going to give you some heads up about what some of the vocabulary words are. It'll let you know just the general flow of things and where the big points are likely to be coming. And I think that's going to prepare you really well for what's going to be happening during the course of the lecture. So read the lecture notes. Right? While you're here, take some notes yourself. Okay? And then sometime after the lecture, compare the notes that you took to the notes that I have in my lecture notes and see if you see that they're lining up pretty well. All right? If you see something that doesn't seem to be saying the same thing, use the book then. Right? Use the book as sort of like a third vote in terms of what the reality is, what's really true about the material that we've been talking about. And if at that point you're still not sure what's going on, then we should talk. All right? But that's how I would use the book. I wouldn't, well, I tell you, I'm kind of odd, right? You're going to definitely appreciate that over the course of this semester. I still have the book that I used in my introductory biology course as a freshman biology major myself. And this is an embarrassing confession. I'm opening myself up to you guys right now. I still crack that book open about once or twice a week just to, ooh, this is a cool story, right? I enjoy reading about those things. So you guys might like to read the book in the same way that I still use my old book, but you don't have to. And it's not going to have too much difference on your grade. So job number one for you, though, read the lecture notes, go over the lecture notes, and look at them before the lecture and look at them after the lecture, and I think you're going to be in pretty good shape. So the textbook is optional, right? I don't care what edition of the book you have. I don't think it makes much difference at all. The figures, the graphics in my PowerPoint presentations come from the 9th and the 10th edition, and they're virtually indistinguishable. So if you're curious about that. But the next sentence down at the top of that page mentions a lab manual. You do need to have a copy of this lab manual. Once a week, you're going to be spending about 2 hours doing an experiment associated with this course. Now, I'm pretty sure you've noticed who wrote the lab manual, right? It kind of jumps out at you. Maybe I'm just overly sensitive about it, but if you're not sure, I'm the guy who wrote the lab manual, right? I'm fond of this lab manual, and over the years, I've had countless students tell me about what a wonderful lab manual it is. And I'll tell you from those conversations, there's something I take away. You might not want to start reading the lab manual just before you want to go to bed because it's such a gripping read, you're not going to be able to fall asleep, right? It's a page turner, you got to go all the way through to the end, and then you start over again and you lose sleep. I don't want to hurt you guys that way. So I suggest you only read the labs just before you go in to do the lab itself. Right? But I do suggest that strongly right? It's very important that you read the experiment before you start to go in and do the experiment itself, right? And so, treat yourself. Just before you go to lab, read the experiment, and you'll get a lot more out of the lab, and they'll go more quickly for you if you've done that. So you do need a lab manual. There are parts of the lab manual that you've got to rip out and turn in along the way, so used lab manuals aren't going to work for you. You got to buy the lab manual, all right? If you're wondering about those lecture notes that I've mentioned a couple times now, they're on the pilot page for the course, free, right? Pull them down. They're a Word document. You can edit them, whatever you like. They're there for you to use however you see fit. And there are a lot of other things on the pilot page for the course that I want you to know about. In fact, everything that I can imagine that might be of help to you is on the pilot page for the course, right? The lecture notes are on the pilot page for the course. The PowerPoint presentations that I'll be using are on the pilot page for the course. Not just today's lecture, but the PowerPoints for all the lectures for the rest of the semester. Now, I'll probably tweak them a little bit as we go along, but that's pretty much what you're going to be seeing from here on out. So the PowerPoints are there, the lecture notes are there. Every past exam that I've given for this class that I think might be of help to you at least, I'll put that little qualifier there, is on the pilot page for the course. So don't feel like you have to rush out and join a sorority or a fraternity to get copies of the old tests. They're all available for you on the pilot page for the course. There's still time to back out of being a pledge. Okay? But so all the old exams are there, as well as answer keys for the tests for which I have answer keys. So all that sort of stuff is there. And then there's one other thing that's on the pilot page for the course that I think might be really helpful to you. Every lecture for this class is going to be recorded with Tegrity. It's a software package that we use here at Wright State. And all of those lectures will be available to you through the pilot page for the course, including this one. Okay? So you might have noticed that there's an opportunity to take this course online this year. Right? We've not done that before, but for those of you who don't care to sit in this beautifully remodeled lecture hall, right, don't come. I don't think you need to physically be here. I'm not going to be giving you bonus points. I can't take attendance. It's too large of a group. Sit at home, wear your pajamas, right? Be comfortable, make some popcorn, and watch the Tegrity recordings of the lectures, right? All of the lectures will be recorded, and you can watch them and enjoy them if you like, whether you're taking the online section of the class or not. For the people, the scores of people who are taking the online version of this course, this is for you. There are 3 times you need to be physically present here. Those 3 times are the 3 dates of the exams. We have to administer the exams to you in person. I understand, and this again is a message to those watching just the Tegrity recording as part of the online offering of the course. I understand that many of you will have conflicts between the exam times for this class and other classes that you're signed up for. If that's a problem for you, we can allow you to take the exam 1 hour before everybody else does. And we'll get you some particulars about that in a few minutes. Okay? So hopefully that'll solve any conflict problems. All right, now back to the syllabus per se. There's lots of stuff on the pilot page for the course. That's my point for you. Please take advantage of it. Check it out. Not only is today's lecture there, but lectures, recordings of lectures from 3 or 4 years ago are also available for you on Pilot. Just as a warning, in the past, we've struggled to get Tegrity to work the first couple of lectures, and so the sound doesn't work on the first couple of them a few times. I don't think that's going to be a problem for us today. But so today's lecture is there, and then starting like the 3rd and 4th lecture, several previous year's lectures are available to you as well. I say that with a little bit of fear because 2 things. Again, this will tell you what a weird guy I am. One of them is that you're going to, if you watched those Tegrity recordings of previous year's lectures, I'm afraid you're going to think that I'm lame because I use the same jokes. Okay, so you'll know in advance when the jokes are coming. You can even do a little drum roll for me coming into it. If you watch a lecture from like 3 years ago, like, oh, here it comes. He's going to say something. Ah, there it is, right? So there's that. And the other thing, and this, I can't imagine any of you would have ever stopped to think about this. I worry that I'm wearing the same clothes. Because you guys have favorite shirts, right? I've got favorite shirts. I only wear the same. This is my favorite shirt. I wanted it to look nice for you guys today, right? And so I probably always start with the favorite shirt. And then I can't wear the same shirt every day. That's going to look weird. You know, there's 2 days in between, 3-4 days in between some lectures. But if I'm always wearing the same shirt, that's going to look weird. So anyway, I obsess about what shirts I wear, primarily because I'm worried about these recordings. But you'll be able to keep score, and you can figure out what my second favorite shirt is by looking at some of those old lectures. Like that's going to be a high priority for you. I can't imagine. Okay, moving along. I have office hours. Long and the short of it is if you want to come and chat with me face-to-face, come catch me at my office just before these lectures, or come catch me at my office just after these lectures. All right, that's going to be your best bet. Here's the deal. From years of teaching classes like this, I know full well that students come to see me when it's convenient for them, and they don't worry too much about if it's convenient or not for me. But here's the deal that I'm making with you. I guarantee you I will be sitting at my desk during those times, and you will catch me, and we can talk. And I'd be happy to talk. I'll answer any questions that you have. I don't care if it's related to biology or not. If you want to know what I think about the War of 1812, we'll figure something out. I don't care. If you want to come and chat, you can catch me then. Feel free to come looking for me at other times. There's a real good chance you won't find me. But come look for me, and if you find me, I'm yours. I don't care what else is going on. I don't care if I'm on the phone with somebody. We'll hang up, and I'll give you my full attention. So if you catch me in my office, I'm like a leprechaun that way. If you catch me, you got me, and I can talk with you for as much and as long as you like. You can catch me for sure during those particular times. Here's another thing. I do have an office phone, right? You can call and you can talk to me on the phone, or you could leave a message. The phone number's up there. You're going to learn over the course of the semester that I get involved in court cases where DNA evidence is involved. I'm a forensic DNA profiling expert. That's part of my area of research. There are a lot of times that attorneys and reporters are calling me, and so I kind of screen my calls. Right? So I may not pick up right away. I'll listen to see who it is that's calling. So you may not get me if you call. But here's the thing. I have a serious psychological problem about responding to emails. All right? And I think those of you who have asked me about the textbook can testify to it already. It's going to be a strange day when it takes more than 2 hours for you to get a response from me from an email. I don't care what time of the day or night you email me, that ping of the email wakes me up in the middle of the night, and I'm compelled to see what the email's about and to respond to it immediately. I get twitchy if I sit there for like more than a minute without responding to an email. So if you want to reach me, even if I'm not in my office, I may be traveling somewhere, whatever, I'll respond to emails. As soon as the plane lands, I'll check my emails and I'll respond to you as soon as the pilot lets me turn the phone on safely. All right? So email is a great way to get a hold of me, and I think if you talk to people who've taken this class in the past, they'll bear that out. I think a couple years ago, a student was monitoring how long, and students can be jerks, right? I said, regardless of the time of day or night, and so there was like a cabal. There was a group of like 20 students said, okay, I'll email them at 1 a.m., you'll email them at 2 a.m., and they checked, and sure enough, my average response time was something like 20 minutes. Right? Because some of them I got, bam, right away. Some of them, the ping, I was so tired, the ping didn't wake me up, and I slept for like 2-3 hours before I checked my email and responded. Right? So, long story short, again, if you want to get something from me, I'll give you a substantive response to an email. usually within a couple hours. It's going to be a rare day when it takes more than a couple hours. And my email address is an easy one to remember, dan.crane with a K at wright.edu. Okay, so that's a great way to reach me and to ask me about stuff. Okay, I've already talked with you a little bit about the labs, right? Got to use this lab manual. Here's a couple other things about the labs. First, there are no labs this week, right? Do not go to the freshman biology lab this week. The labs will start next week. So like the day after Labor Day, next Monday, is when the labs for this class start. There are no labs this week, okay? When you do start going to the labs, they're going to be expecting you to have goggles and stuff to protect your feet from acid being spilled on them, so it's pretty much standard laboratory stuff. You want to have some goggles, you'll want to have some gloves, and you'll want to have closed-toed shoes, no sandals, and you'll want to wear something that covers your legs. In other words, no bikini bottoms or short shorts, right? You need to have protection from stuff that may be splashing on you. Yes?
So would we need to wear a lab coat if needed, if we have one already?
You're welcome to bring a lab coat. It's not going to be required. You're quite welcome to have a lab coat with you. Yeah?
You need a laboratory guide. I know for chemistry, I know I need a laboratory.
The laboratory guide that you would be talking about for us would be this lab manual. That's it. That's all you need, this book.
Yeah.
All right? Now, let me do a preemptive strike on something here. I know this will be a problem, and I'll sort of in my head chuckle when at the end of the semester I remind you I said this at the very first time we met. The lab has 120 points associated with it. Right? So there's reports that you've got to write, there are questions you have to answer, there are quizzes that you take. All together, that's going to total up to 120 points. The lab only counts 25% toward your grade for the course. Right? And the course itself is based on 400 points. Right? So those extra 20 points are not extra credit or bonuses of some sort. What we'll do is at the end of the semester, we'll figure out what percent of the 120 points you got, and that will be the number of points out of 100 that you got for the rest of the course. Okay? So just so you understand, there's not a mistake. There are 120 points for the lab. It's going to get brought down in some sense by taking a percentage. Okay? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You said something about needing gloves. Are those not going to be provided? You need to buy your own?
You know, I'll get back to you about the glove bit. As I said it, I wasn't entirely sure. I know in the past we have required gloves, but I think this year we might not. I'll check with the people in the lab to see what they have in mind. All right? Goggles and shoes and pants for sure. All right? Cool. More. There's no lab practical. There's no cumulative lab test. All right. So there's some lab stuff for you. Again, labs will be starting next week, and you'll use the lab manual to guide you through that whole process. Then, more stuff about grades. Okay, so I've already told you the class is built around this idea of 400 points. There are 2 midterm exams. The dates were mentioned on that first page of the syllabus. Each of those are worth 90 points. There are going to be 45 2-point multiple choice questions that you'll get for the first 2 exams for the class, the midterm exams. Excuse me. There will be a final exam for the class. The final exam is given at a time that the registrar determines years in advance, right? There's no flexibility about that. It's like sometime in December from 8 till 10 in the morning, right? That's worth 116 points, okay? And what that'll be is 58 2-point multiple choice questions, okay? That'll be right here. All the exams will be right here in this room, unless you're taking the online section, in which case we'll have you go to 101 Faucet. Note to the people on integrity. not for you guys that are physically here. You'll be here for the final exam and the 2 midterm exams. If you're stopping and you're doing some quick math, you've recognized that I'm 4 points short of 300, right? The lab's going to count 100. The lectures are going to count 300. The 4 missing points from the lecture are this. You guys have something like 47 and a half hours to take a pre-quiz on the pilot page of the course. Right? If you take that pre-quiz, you get 4 points counted toward your grade for the class. You have until the beginning, until we turn the integrity recording on, of lecture on Thursday of this week to do that pre-quiz. Nobody cares what answers you put down. But I want you to poke around on the pilot page of the course, find that pre-quiz. It's not hidden, right? But take it, go through the whole quiz, and you'll get 1% of your grade right out of the gate. No questions asked except for the questions on the quiz, right? And I don't care, again, what answers you give. It'd be nice if you gave a good faith effort to give, your best answers to those questions, but one of the choices, there are multiple choice questions, one of the choices is something like, I don't know, right? And I'm cool with that. That's going to help me get a sense for what sort of things I need to take more time with and, give me a better sense of what would help you guys during the course of our discussion. So I'm asking you, take the pre-quiz. About a third of you have already. It's been available for about a month and a half. And for those of you who are eager beavers looking at the pilot page that long ago, many of you have already taken it. For those of you who have not, you need to take that quiz before the beginning of class on Thursday of this week. And once that time point is passed, there's no going back. There's no makeups. There's nothing like that, right? So you got 2 days to take that quiz if you haven't already. So that gets us to a total of 400 points, 290-point midterms, 116-point final exam, somewhat cumulative. Don't worry too much about the cumulative part. We'll talk about that more later in the class. 4 points for a pre-quiz and 100 points for the lab. That's where all the points are coming from. If you want to know how the grades are going to get broken down, I've got the grading scale there. It's pretty standard stuff, right? 90 to 100 is an A. The one thing that I depart from sort of normal standard grading scales is I make the target for C pretty big, from 67% up to 79 or 80% essentially. That counts as a C. In D is a pretty small window. It's 60 to 66%, right? So that's the only small difference there. Probably not even worth talking about. Okay, so 2 pages of the syllabus down. We're on the last page. This one has less text, so I can make it bigger for you. Extra credit, okay? I've taught this class a lot. I know that a lot of you are looking for ways to shine my car, right, and do stuff like that. My car is shiny enough, no car washes, thank you. I am fond of beer. You'll realize that over the course of the semester, but no gifts of beer, please. If you want extra credit, I got one thing that will work for you. 2, really, but one that I really want to draw your attention to. Here it is. It's spelled out for you right there. Write a question that I could use on one of the exams for the class. If I use your question on an exam for the class, you get, what is that, 2 points of extra credit? I think that's what it says up there, 0.5% of your grade. Okay? That's pretty much the only way that you're going to be able to get extra credit for this course. There's one exception, and I'll tell you about it in just a moment. All right? So what do you suppose is up with that? Why am I dangling this incentive in front of you to write questions for the exam? I'm trying to project and figure out what you guys would be thinking. Are you thinking I'm lazy? Are you thinking that, boy, this guy's going to get 500 students to write his exams and he can just sit back and drink beer with his shoes up on the desk in his office having a good old time? Well, Yeah, that'd be really cool. I'd like that. I'm not at all opposed to the idea of you guys writing the exams so that I don't have to. I don't think that's likely to happen, though, based on past experience. That would be swell. The more that you guys can write for the exam, the easier my job becomes, and I'm happy with that. But again, I think that's a fairly unlikely expectation. Here's why I really want you to take some time and write some exam questions. I think what you will find is that the exams that I give you for this class are fairly different from the exams that you've taken up till this point in your academic careers. Okay? I like to think, right, and please, don't disillusion me of this misperception if it is a misperception, but I like to think that the questions that I'm asking on the exams are concept driven, right? They're not memorization friendly, they're not detail specific, right? I'm not going to ask you things like what's the molecular weight of glucose, right? I don't think it's important for you to know the molecular weight of glucose or other little bits of trivia like that will come in handy in the molecular biology Trivial Pursuit game that's bound to be coming out soon, right? I don't care if you know that stuff. And you know why I don't care? I don't care because if you ever find yourself in a circumstance where you need to know the molecular weight of glucose, I got a solution for you. You don't need to waste brain cells for that. There's this thing called Google, right? Type in molecular weight of glucose and bam, in milliseconds, you're going to know the molecular weight of glucose, right? You don't need to clutter up your head with those sorts of bits of trivia. What you need, and what Google can't help you with, is you need to understand how stuff works, right? I want you to understand the concepts. I want you to be able to wrap your head around the things that I'm talking with you about here in this class so that you understand how stuff works. And if you tweaked something, like if you took a cog out of the back of a watch, right, what effect is that going to have? How does it change if you change one of those parameters, right? I want you to understand how stuff works. I want you to understand the concepts. And I try pretty hard to have all the exam questions reward people who understand the way things are working and maybe penalize people who get mired down in the details. Again, I think this is likely to be fairly different from any kind of testing strategy you've seen before. It's probably much more like the kind of tests you're going to see as you progress through the rest of the biology curriculum. Okay? So in a sense, this is your first wake-up call to how it is that biologists write tests and think about things. And I've talked in the past with students who have come to me after the first test and say, gee, I've never missed a question on a biology test in high school, and I got a D on the test that we just took. What's the deal? And I'll say, you know what? I'll bet you're really good at memorizing stuff, right? You gotta change the way you're thinking. If that's the case, that's a cool skill to have, right? But what I need is for you to think in terms of how stuff is working. And it's hard for people to make that change. And in fact, I'll bet most of you are thinking, oh, that's not me. What you need to do is this. Look at the old exams that are available to you on the pilot page for the course, right? That's what you got to do. The sooner you do that, the better off you will be. Look at them. Right? Look at the kind of questions, see how it is that they're phrased, see what sort of things they're going after, wrap your heads around them. That's the kind of questions you're going to have. And looking at those questions is going to get you thinking, oh, I know how I could write a question like that. And then you'll write a question, and I'll get you some extra credit for having written it. It's a trick. This extra credit is a ploy on my part to incentivize you to look at the old tests. It's pretty much what it comes down to. There's no limit on the number of questions you can give to me. If one person writes 20 questions for the first exam and they're all super great questions, they'll get whatever, 40 extra credit points for the class, right? There's no limit. What I think you'll find happens if you do take me up on this is you'll give me a question, and I will edit it. I'll give you some suggestions, and I'll give it back to you. If you want me to do that kind of editing, do not send it to me by email. Give me a hard copy so I can make edits on it, and I'll have it for you the next time the class meets. Come catch me at the beginning of class or after the class or during my office hours, and I'll hand you a marked up copy the next time that we meet. And we'll go back and forth 2-3 times, but you'll get your question on the exam, you'll get the extra credit points, and you'll be in good shape for tackling the other kind of questions that you'll see that I come up with for the class. Right? So how do you get extra credit? Write questions that I can use on the exam. And if I use it on the exam, you'll get the extra credit. That's true for the final exam. It's true for the first and the second midterm exam. The other way you get extra credit in this class is you get 1 shiny point out of 400 just for looking at the folder that has, on the pilot page for the course, that has the old exams for the first exam in this class. Probably could have said that a little more plainly. But you get 1 extra credit point if you open the folder on Pilot that holds the old exams for the first exam for this course by a particular date. August 20, you can start right now. You have to do it by September 15th. So you got a couple weeks to actually find it on the Pilot page and open it. It's not some sort of game where a shiny coin pops out of the folder and there's a bell or anything like that, but we'll know that you opened up that folder, and when we've seen that you've opened up the folder, we'll give you a point of extra credit. Okay? All right. Do that. Look at the old tests for the class. The rest of this stuff I think I can sum up really succinctly, right? Don't cheat. Fair enough? Okay, don't copy other people's work. That's going to be true for the lab reports. Don't look over other people's shoulders and copy their answers. Yeah, the normal stuff. Don't cheat. It's there in black and white if you're not entirely sure what I mean by that. All right, boy, I feel like I need a break. I'm out of shape for these sorts of things, but this is a chance now for you guys to ask me questions about the general structure of the course. In some sense, this syllabus is like a contract. Here are my terms. Do you want to negotiate a little bit? What can we do? Have any questions? If not, we're going to forge ahead. Question?
As far as materials bringing to class, you don't need to bring books?
You know, the question is, what should you bring to class? If I were you, I would bring a printout of the lecture notes, right? That helps me. If you wanted to do it just on a laptop, that's fine, right? So the lecture notes and then something to take notes with. I will never tell you, okay, everybody open up to page 94, right? Because frankly, I don't know what's on page 94, right? I can't think of anything else that you might have to have aside from being awake, right? And but you know, that goes without saying. Yes?
So on the first page of your syllabus, you have reading. Is that the reading you went done before class, or is that the reading you're going over during class?
So there's a question about, in the syllabus, there's a column that says reading. What I'm doing there is I'm drawing your attention to the chapter in the textbook that corresponds to the things that I'll be talking about. What you do with that information is entirely up to you, right? If you wanted to read the chapter before you heard the lecture, I could see that being very helpful. If you wanted to read the chapter before and after the lecture, oh boy, very good. I think that could be very, very helpful. If you just wanted to read it after, that'd be fine. If you didn't want to read it at all, and that works for you, I got no problem with that, right? So, you know, use the book however it works best for you. There are people who are tactile learners, and it really helps them to be able to turn the page in a way that sitting here listening to a conversation doesn't click for them, right? You know who you are. Do that with the book, right? So, you know, whatever works for you. I'm not going to look down on you, regardless of what you choose to do. Yeah?
So as far as the textbook being optional goes,
Yeah.
Do you happen to know if it's the same book that's used for the next prior course?
That's a great question. So the question is, if this book is optional for this course, what's up with the next course in this series? 1150 is that course number, I think. And the answer to that question is it is required for the next course in the series. So this is a 2-semester series, right? If you're pretty sure you're going to be taking the next course that we have for our biology majors here at Wright State, then you may as well just get the book right now. I don't think it's going to be particularly important what version, what edition of the book you have, but it will be required for the next class. Yeah?
Do we need the mastering biology at all?
Now, by mastering biology, are you talking about some sort of online access code kind of thing? Yeah, if you think that might help you, you're welcome to. No, not at all. What was that? Yeah, so there are ancillary materials that the textbook publisher produces and charges for you to use. I have seen them. I've played with them a little bit. Some of them are awfully slick. I could see having some fun going through them, and I could see them helping you, but I'm certainly not going to say you must have that. I've seen them. I haven't really wrapped my head around them. I can tell you some of them the stuff you can do is really slick from a teaching perspective, but I'm not going to expect you to have looked at those things. One more, yeah.
Does the lab and the lecture, do they go together?
Yeah, so do the lab and lecture go together? I sure would like to think that they do. That's what I'm shooting for in a big way. One of the reasons there is no lab the first week of the semester is so that the first lab can tie in better with what's going on in the course of the lectures. Talking about the syllabus is a pretty boring laboratory exercise, all right? So that's one of the reasons we start a week late. There is, for the small number of people who may be taking this class for a second time, you'll notice that there's a shiny new experiment this year that we haven't done before. It's experiment number 4, and I slipped that one in over the summer to give one more lab, but to help with the pacing better so that the things that I'm talking about in the lectures coincide pretty closely with what's going on in the lab. I'm going to try pretty hard during the course of the semester to say, hey, this week in lab, you're going to be seeing this, just like what I'm talking about right here. And I'm going to be telegraphing to the teaching assistants for the lab that, I'm going to talk about this in lecture this week. You might want to bring that up. So I try to link them as best as I can. And I think you'll find this year that they're pretty well lined up. Yeah?
Is there certain preparation that we need to do for the lab?
The thing you need to do to be ready for the lab is read the experiment before you go to the lab. All right? The labs will be more fun, you'll get more out of them, but most importantly, you'll finish them faster if you've skimmed through the lab before you go in there. Yeah?
Is there anything specific we have to bring to the SI session?
So, there's a question about SI sessions. Let's talk about SIs. SI is short for Supplemental Instructor. There are two supplemental, there are two supplemental instructors for this course. Their shiny faces are there on the screen, and they're sitting very inconspicuously in the front row here, way at the end, right? Haley and Lauren are the two supplemental instructors for the course. You'll see from this PowerPoint slide that they have email addresses. I don't think they have the same genetic abnormality that I have that compels me to check my email that frequently, but they're pretty good about responding to emails, at least from me, so we'll see how they do with you, right? So you can contact them by email. They apparently don't know where they're going to be doing their SI sessions yet, right? And that's still current, but they'll let us know Thursday. Yeah, so next time we meet, I'll be able to tell you where those SI sessions will be. The times are pinned down. It's just a matter of finding a room for them. use the supplemental instructors for this course like crazy, right? Take advantage of them. Go to their weekly sessions. What they'll do in those sessions is, these are two students who have done really well in this class in the past, and they'll tell you very frankly, oh my gosh, when he starts talking about what shirt he's wearing, just zone out. It doesn't matter, right? But come back in like 2-3 minutes, and there might be something worthwhile. They'll be able to tell you how to make sense of my lectures. They'll be able to tell you how to make sense of the tests, and they have mastered the material that we're talking about, and they may be able to phrase things for you in a way that's easier for you to understand, or better paced, or whatever, than I can. You'll get a much more one-on-one sort of experience by going to their supplemental instruction sessions. I think you asked, do you have to go? The short answer is no. You don't have to go. But I'll tell you this, students who do go, we know from having analyzed the data just last fall, students who do go score about 15 to 20% higher on each of the exams than students who don't go. All right? So something's working. It may be that there's some self-selection. It may be that only the most skilled, motivated students go to those sessions, but you want to be one of those people anyway, right? So it may be we're getting a different subset of the students who go to the SI sessions. It may be that the SI sessions really do deliver better understanding of the material. Either way, go, right? And there's something I'm toying with. So I don't want to be held to this. This is not part of a contract. But I'm thinking after the first exam has come and gone, I'm thinking that I might this year offer a chance for students who are unhappy with how they did on the first test to get some of the points back that they lost by going to the SI sessions. All right, so that's not going to kick in until after the first exam. After the first exam, we'll talk. But that might be another reason to go to the SI sessions. They have email. Email them. I'm trying to get them to be able to have online, virtual SI sessions. I don't know what the final verdict on that is. You're having them? Great. So we'll be pushing out an email to you that tells you how to get to their virtual sessions as well. You don't even have to be physically present for their SI sessions. Okay? All right. Oh, there's another question. All the exams that are online for the pilot page of the course are Microsoft Word files. If you really want them in a different format, I don't want to be the guy who does it, but bother Haley or Lauren, send them an email, and I bet you could persuade them to send them to you as a PDF. Yeah, so talk with Lauren and Haley about that as well. There's some questions on the old tests that required me to draw in structures by hand, and those aren't part of the electronic file that I've got. So they're lost to the ether at this point. But that's a relatively small number, and the SIs will be able to tell you what kind of structures might have been in there. Okay. So pretty much any question that you might have for me, you probably could get a pretty solid answer from either of our two supplemental instructors. You feel free to hit them up for help as much as you like. In addition to the two supplemental instructors, there are 7 graduate teaching assistants for this class. Each of them is responsible for 2 or 3 laboratory sections. So you're going to be getting to know a graduate teaching assistant pretty well as well. Within the next day or so, on the pilot page for the course, we will be listing for you their names and contact information and their office hours. You can use them as an assistance for you for the course, not just for the lab. They can also answer questions for you about the lectures if you like. So that will all be up on the pilot page pretty much as soon as I get the complete set of information from them. All right. Well, guess what? I think we're done talking about the syllabus. And I've got a half hour to talk with you about biology. Now, Gee, it seems ages ago, earlier today, I told you biology is the study of life. That's a formal textbook definition. Biologists study living things. Boy, it's a cool topic. It's like the coolest topic I can imagine. I really want to know how to live better, live longer, right? How am I going to figure that out? Gee, I have a good idea. Why don't I study biology? I mean, let's just cut out all the middleman things. This is perhaps, at least to me, right, it's the single most important subject there is. And we're all studying stuff so that we know how to live better. Let's study how living things work. That's got to be a step in the right direction to understanding how to live better ourselves, right? So biology is the study of life. You guys you've made the choice to take a really cool class. This is my favorite class by far to teach. I love this topic. It's neat stuff. I think you guys are going to agree with me by the end of the semester. And let me tell you something, truth in advertising, right up front. I know that on the order of a third of the people in this room are misguided. They think they're going to become chemistry majors or physics majors, heaven forbid an accountancy major, right? What are you doing here, right? That seems strange. My ambition is by the end of this semester, I'm going to win you all over to being biology major, right? That's my plan. You can take it as a challenge if you like, but I'm going to be persistent, I'm going to be subtle, I'm going to be subliminal, and I'm going to be blatant all at the same time. I'm going to get you guys all to be biology majors. If at the end of the semester I have failed in that, you come down here and you talk with me, and I'll still take a shot at setting you straight, right? Because this is the thing to do, and I'm glad you're here just so you have the chance to be evangelized. I'm going to get you all to be biology majors, at least those of you who haven't made that decision already. I'm going to win you over. And those of you who already have, you can snicker at the rest because they still haven't figured it out yet. It's just a matter of time. We'll get to them. All right? So this is a class about the study of life. It's biology. That's what this is all about. And let me tell you that you'll be telling your parents and your roommates and your friends that this class started out in a sort of strange way, because I want to ask you right now, anybody here not sure what we mean by something being alive? It's kind of a silly question. It's a stupid question. I mean, children at the age of 1 or 2 know the difference between something that's alive and not alive, right? It's just something we take for granted. But this is a class about the study of life, living things, and it seems to me like it's important that we get off on a good start by talking about something that seems pretty basic. What does it mean to be alive? And let's try to think about this, scientifically, rigorously, logically, right? What are the things that you look for that help you to decide, hey, that thing's alive, that guy, he's alive, this chair, I'm not that convinced, right? Easy, right? What do I look for to see if something's alive or not? What are the distinguishing things? The answers are up there on the screen, all right? So that's a rhetorical question, right? I'm going to take you through by the hand here to talk about that. Here's the way things are going to go for most of the rest of the semester. I'm going to have a lecture outline come straight out of the lecture notes, and then I'm going to show you some pictures to help me make some points, and we'll work our way through the lecture outline. So if you're unhappy with the seat that you have because you don't get to see the screen that well, come sit in a different chair next week, because this is the way it's going to work pretty much from here on out. So what do you look for? Well, the general consensus is that we expect living things to be different from non-living things in 4 fairly fundamentally important different ways. Okay? At the top of the list is this idea of organization. We expect living things to be more organized than their surroundings. We expect there to be a boundary that defines where the living thing begins and when you're no longer talking about the living thing. Sort of like the beach around an island, right? You know, there's a boundary. The island is on the one side of the beach, and the ocean or the sea is on the other side, right? So living things tend to be more organized than things that aren't living. Cell walls, cell membranes, skin, right? We've got boundaries, and on one side of the boundary, stuff is organized differently than on the other side of the boundary, okay? So that's one of the criteria we often look for when we're checking to see if something's alive. Does it display this sort of feature of organization? But with that said, let me point out that non-living things can also pass this test to at least some degree, right? I used a beach as an example just a few minutes ago, right? Islands have boundaries, right? Chairs have boundaries. Rocks have boundaries. The stuff on the one side of the boundary is different than the stuff on the other side. So, boundary may not be the single best discriminating feature. Organization may not even be the best discriminating feature for something alive relative to something that's dead. How about that? So our first criteria, yeah, we can all agree living things tend to be more organized than non-living things. But wait a minute here. A lot of non-living things could be argued to display that same characteristic. Okay? Stars, for instance, certainly meet that criteria. The stuff on the outside of the star is different than the stuff on the inside. The stuff on the inside is more organized in many ways than the stuff on the outside. Nobody here thinks a star's alive, right? So, what do? Well, we can't work with just one thing. Let's talk about some other things. How about these other characteristics, like the differences that we see between a star and a cute little puppy? I have a beagle at home, all right? And so, you know, that comes quickly to mind for me. What else is different? We talked about organization, right? There's the stuff inside the star being of a different composition, concentration, organization than the stuff on the outside. Certainly true for a puppy as well. The stuff on the inside, clearly different. What else? How about these other things, like, for instance, the ability to reproduce, right? That's another one of the 4 criteria people often expect living things to have. Like begets like, right? You know, where do puppies come from? They come from other puppies, right? That sort of thing, right? So the ability to reproduce is something that's pretty important for a living thing. But I've already told you something personal, a lot of personal things I think already, but I got a dog, right? It's a girl dog, right? We had a procedure done on our girl dog when she was about 6 months old. She's not reproducing anymore, right? If you guys are telling me that my dog is dead because of that procedure, right, I'm going to be sad, right? I don't want to be sad. I think she's a vibrant, active 3-year-old beagle, runs around, chases balls. If you're telling me that because we had her fixed, she's dead, I don't feel right about that. That doesn't seem to be consistent with my experiences in the real world. So the ability to reproduce, maybe it's not as clean cut as you would have thought. A living thing that we can all agree is alive might not have the ability to reproduce anymore, and we don't disqualify them. We don't say they're dead just because of that. How about the flip side? What about a star? Can a star reproduce? I think the short answer is yeah. You know what stars do? If stars get drawn by gravity toward a gas cloud, what do? They suck up the gas cloud, right? They spin faster because they've gotten more mass, and if they spin fast enough and get enough mass, they spin off a big glob of the star that can become another star. You can have, where you had 1 star, you get 2 stars. Sure, stars can reproduce. Okay, so things that we can agree aren't alive can be organized and reproduce, and things that we agree are alive cannot reproduce and yet still be alive. Okay, we're striking out. We got 2 criteria, and I don't think either of them are getting the job done in terms of helping us decide if something's alive or not. I suggested that stars can be attracted to gas clouds, right? Gravity is pulling them in. There's a third criteria we should talk about. What about this idea of being able to respond to stimuli, right? That's a good one, right? Over Thanksgiving, when you're home for Thanksgiving break and you're having the big family dinner, right? If grandma's on the couch and it's time to eat, right? But you're not sure if she's awake or not, what do? You go and you poke grandma, right? And if she responds to that stimulus, it's a happy occasion and everybody goes off and has dinner. And if she doesn't respond to the stimulus, there's a different set of things that happen shortly after that, right? So we expect living things to respond to stimuli. Feel free to conduct that experiment over Thanksgiving. It's a very practical thing to do as a biology major. So, we expect living things to respond to stimuli. But I just told you stars can respond to stimuli too. Maybe it's a question of what the relevant stimulus is. For a star, getting poked, what's a star care about getting poked? Stars might care a whole lot more about, juicy hydrogen gas that I can consume and get bigger upon, right? That's their food in some sense. So they're attracted to that. They're responding to that stimulus. Grandma's responding to getting poked, and she doesn't care that much about hydrogen gas clouds. Right? It's just cockroaches. Any of you living in Wright State housing, right? Later today, turn the lights on like at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're sending me that obnoxious email, right? At 2 in the morning, turn the lights on and they scurry away. They're responding to a stimulus, right? So we expect living things to respond to stimuli, but an argument can be made that non-living things respond to certain stimuli as well. Stars respond to gas clouds. You can actually condition an iron bar to respond to magnets or to bend more flexibly by doing certain things to it, right? So there's different things that, bottom line, we got 3 criteria. No, the 3 of them together still aren't helping us definitively say what's alive and what's not alive. The 4th one on my list here for you today is this idea about repairing damage. Right? We expect living things to not only be able to reproduce and to be organized and to respond to stimuli, we also expect them to some extent to be able to repair damage. Right? If you cut me and you haven't cut me too badly, I'll form a scab, and a couple weeks or months later, I may not be that different than I was before the cut happened. I hopefully will be able to repair that damage. Right? That's something we kind of expect living things to be able to do that non-living things can't. If grandma fails the poke test, you should also expect that she's going to fail the repair damage test if you follow up with that, right? So, but what about non-living things, right? How about those stars? What's the equivalent to cutting me for a star? How about if you took like this really big scalpel and you took a slice out of a star, cut a wedge out of it, right? At some point, if you cut out too much of the star's mass, it's not going to be able to, carry on fusion and it'll die. Just like if you cut me too deeply, I won't be able to recover. But if it's not too big of a slice, stars can be pretty forgiving about this, I would presume. If you don't cut out too big of a slice, the star will simply, through gravity, fold back, become a sphere again, maybe a smaller sphere than it was before, probably a smaller sphere than it was before, but otherwise pretty much indistinguishable from the star before you cut it. So maybe stars can repair damage as well. So I've gone through a list of 4 things. And philosophers have wrestled with what makes something alive for thousands of years. Plato and Socrates have agonized over this thousands of years ago, and the best that the deepest thinkers have been able to come up with are those 4 criteria. And by all accounts, everybody should accept that, they don't quite get the job done. And it's a remarkable thing, isn't it? Because, again, this guy's alive, right? Do I need to poke you? I mean, no. We know when something's alive, and yet it's hard to put our finger on what it is that makes us so sure that something's alive and something's not alive. So what's the point? Well, part of the point is I want you to appreciate this is not as trivial of a question as you probably came in thinking that it was. It's important because we're studying life. That's what this class is about. And I think we need to understand that, well, maybe it's not as black and white as we thought. And I want you now to be open to the possibility that there will be important things we can learn about living things from understanding and studying things that aren't alive. The same sort of chemistry, the same sort of rules that govern the way that non-living things work, we don't get any sort of pass as living organisms. We follow the same rules. And in fact, what's going to happen is for the first couple weeks of this class, I'm going to be talking with you about those very fundamental, basic rules that apply equally to non-living things as well as to living things, so that we can see how we bend those rules a little bit to do some of the other things that living things pull off. Okay? So, bear with me for the first week or two as I talk with you about atoms and molecules and how they interact with each other. It's for a good reason. It's because ultimately the line between what is living and not living is blurry at best. Okay? And it's kind of a fun exercise. Over beer or soft drinks, if you prefer, talk about, dude, are you alive? Right? You know, this gives rise to some fun discussions. So for this class, right, we've talked about what it is to be alive. Right? That's what we're studying here. I've given a glancing blow to this idea of reductionism versus holism. Here's the deal. Those are fancy words. Reductionists look at things at the finest level of detail that they can, right? Subatomic particles, atoms, molecules, right? Reductionists really focus in on the smallest possible details. People who are holistic are looking more for the bigger picture, how the whole organism works, how the ecosystem works, how the planets work, stuff like that. This class, admittedly, is going to be more on the reductionist end of the spectrum than the holistic end of the spectrum. The next class in this series takes things to that next level. We're going to start out small and build up to the more complicated organ systems and organisms and ecosystems. Okay? This class, we're going to start as small as you can get. We're going to talk and lecture on Thursday about subatomic particles, and we'll take it up from there. With that said, I'm going to ask you to indulge me in something else. Remember, it's all connected, right? Try to always keep that big picture in mind. And I'll get a thrill if 6 months from now, when you're taking the next course in this series and you're talking about African savannas and antelopes and gazelles and stuff like that, I'll get a thrill if when those sorts of discussions are going on, you take a step back and you say to yourself, hey, how's that working at a molecular level? What's going on at the level of their DNA or their glucose molecules, right? That's where you really get the whole story for living things, is look at the big picture. It's going to be hard for you to see the big picture when we start, because we're going to be talking about nothing but small stuff at the beginning. But I'll try to remind you, you know, this plays into a bigger whole, and here's how it all meshes together. So try to always remember, keep that in perspective. You're going to have biology faculty that are harping on you about animals and ecosystems. Remember, there's this other stuff going on under the hood as well. And you'll have a richer, better understanding of the whole business if you do that once in a while. But again, my apologies. We are going to start by talking about the really nitty-gritty stuff to begin with. And, cool thing, every living thing shares a same basic underlying chemistry. We have this fundamental chemistry, and here's the deal. In the first section of the course, we're going to be talking about chemistry and atoms. Right? In the second part of the course, we'll ratchet it up a little bit to talk about cells. And then in the third part of this course, I'm going to be talking with you about genetics, and that's when I'm really going to hit my stride. If you guys have a hard time staying awake for the first and second part of the course, it's my fault, not yours, because that doesn't light my fire nearly so much as talking about DNA. By trade, I am a molecular biologist. What molecular biologists do is they study DNA, right? I'm a DNA guy. That's what all of my research is about. That's what all of my schooling has been about, right? I get a real kick out of talking about this. And in fact, I'm being careful right now to not read what's on the screen, because when I say that, I get a disturbing chill that runs up and down my spine. It's like, of course, it's so hugely important. It is that's all that matters, right? So I'm not going to do that to myself right now, right? But that sentence that the arrow is pointing to is a big stinking deal. Excuse the blue language, right? For the last 50 years, we've known that DNA is that, right? Before that point in time, it was stupid guesses that were way off the mark. We are in a privileged point in time that we have that insight, and we can do amazing things in terms of understanding ourselves and manipulating ourselves and our environment because we know that to be the case. And here is a pretty picture of DNA, more of a cartoon version of it over here. I expect most of you have seen these pictures before. But every living thing on this planet, I talk about a fundamental unifying chemistry. At the core of it all, we all use nucleic acids, essentially DNA, for the same purpose. Every living thing on this planet does. Fundamental chemistry, the lessons that we learn from studying bacteria apply directly to what we can do with human beings. It's because we have that same chemistry in play. It's because we have that same reliance upon nucleic acids to store information. You know what the best explanation for all living things having that common chemistry is? Best scientific explanation, bar none, evolution. We all share a common ancestor. We're derived from a common ancestor that had this fundamental chemistry that has been passed on and modified over time, but is still fundamentally the same. That first living thing had DNA. That first living thing used glucose. That first living thing did glycolysis. Lots of things that we're going to talk about in this class. And that is so cool, and it's so helpful to us, because the stuff that we can learn from studying how bacteria do glycolysis tell us directly how we do glycolysis without us having to mutagenize and do experiments on human beings to figure the same things out. And the drugs that we can develop that work on one group of organisms, we expect will work on other groups of organisms. Not everything is not a one-off creation, right? So I've used the word evolution. And I've been looking at you guys, and some of you don't look that happy or comfortable at this point. And I wouldn't be surprised if for a lot of you, this is the first class that you're really going to be asked to grapple with the idea of evolution. A lot of high school biology teachers are afraid to talk about evolution, given the alternatives that often get espoused. Creationism, in a word, right? Well, here's the thing. This is a science class. It's in a biology department in a college of science and math. The best explanation for life on this planet, let me qualify that, the best scientific explanation for life on this planet is evolution, right? That's fundamental for understanding what's going on in a class like this. It's a scientific explanation. And I'll skip a little bit ahead on well, I actually already talked with you about these things. So let's talk about not just evolution as a central theme, but the difference between a scientific explanation and something that's not a scientific explanation. Right? There's an important distinction to make here. A scientific explanation is dependent only upon natural laws. Things like the speed of light and gravity and strong and weak nuclear attractions. Science has a set of rules, a set of laws, natural laws we call them, and for something to be scientific, it has to adhere to those laws, to those rules of how things work in nature. Creationism, by definition, is supernatural. Okay? It's beyond those natural laws. It's the essence, it's the core idea behind creationism, is that God, or some other divine being, depending on your religious background, but something has come in and suspended those natural laws. By some reckoning, just for an instant to get everything started. By other reckonings, every millisecond to keep your heart beating and your cells moving, right? But those approaches, those theological explanations for how life came to be on this planet are by their very nature not scientific, because it's central to the idea that you suspended natural laws. And so when I say evolution is the best scientific explanation, what I'm saying pretty plainly is that if you want to play by these rules that we know, this is how life could come to be, the way we see it on this planet. Funny thing about science is science can't tell you that the laws were not suspended, right? So biologists can't tell you creationism didn't happen. All they can say with confidence is that if creationism happened, it was supernatural. It was something separate and apart from the laws that we know apply right now, today, to the world around us. Okay? So, this is a biology class. It's a science class. There's this guy, famous guy. I say that with a little bit of a shrug because I'll be surprised if anybody here has ever heard of this guy, but he's famous in my world for being the founder of the field of population genetics within the United States. Big claim to fame, right? His name is Theodosius Dobzhansky, and he's known for having said, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. Boy, he hit the nail on the head. Nothing in this class will make sense to you in the big picture unless you once in a while stop and think, how did that evolve? Right? What was it like before? How did it change? What did it change from? Right? So I encourage you to stop and think about that once in a while as we're going through this class. If you find you're confused about something, it might help you if you stop and you say, how does evolution impinge on this? And you may find then that gives you a better insight in terms of what's going on. And so just to wrap things up a little bit today, let's see how we're doing for time. I got like 3 minutes left. Let me talk with you about what it is I really mean then by talking about natural versus supernatural phenomena. How many strange things have you guys learned about me today? Well, are you keeping track? Keeping score? Shirt problems? Fixed dogs? I don't know, email compulsions, right? Here's a big one, right? A big one for me is I want to know as much as I can before I die. I want to understand stuff. It's really important to me to know stuff. I want to know stuff. There are 3 ways that philosophers have decided we can know things. Okay? One of them is through the scientific method. Poking, prodding, conducting experiments. Another, curiously, is through mathematical reasoning, just thinking about how numbers combine and interact with each other. That's something separate and apart from science, but it's an important way for us to understand things about the world, to know and to learn things. And the third is from, essentially, there are different ways to dress it up, but divine inspiration. Something from outside has imparted some knowledge to us that's separate from what you can learn from science and separate from what you can learn from math. I want to know all 3 of those things. I don't want to shut myself off to any of those avenues. There's only so much I can do with math, right? I got some math skills, but that's not my strong suit. I use science a lot. I also have a faith. And I want to learn as much as I can from that third avenue, right? Here's what I learned from those different things. I learned from science the how of things happen, right? The nuts and bolts of how it happened. How did it rain 2 nights ago, right? It rained because a cold front came through and there was a change in atmospheric pressure and humidity levels all came into play. How is a scientific kind of question, and we can get good answers to how questions. The religion and philosophy finger, right, that aspect, that's really good at explaining and giving us insights into why. Purpose, what's the purpose? Why did it rain on my wedding day is very different than how did it rain on my wedding day. And I think there may be important things for us to appreciate from wrapping our heads around both and being open to both. Let me leave you with one quick story, and we'll call it a day. Let's say you want to know everything you can know about World War II. That's your ambition, right? You can do it from a very scientific perspective. You can ask how many bullets were fired. You can ask what the weather conditions were like. But if you really want to know what happened during World War II, you need to wrestle with the idea of good versus evil. And the funny thing is that a Nazi scientist and an Allied scientist should be able to agree on the how questions, right? But you should never expect them to agree on what triumphed, good or evil, because that's just not something that's a matter of belief. It's something separate and apart from natural laws. But again, if you want to know what's going on, I encourage you to be open to the insights you get from all 3 of those different avenues. This class is about the how. This class isn't about the why. We're going to talk a lot about evolution in this class. All right? Thursday, we're going to talk about chemistry and have some fun with that. See you guys then.